All right, thanks very much for the Derek and Morgan for inviting me to come to all the way from Australia to share with you my experience with social media. And I think that for some of you who might see the title of this presentation and think, you know, I don't really work in the field of public health, I guess what I want to sort of share with you today is kind of applicable to any aspect of sort of scientific activity, I guess, and even entomology. So even if you're looking to conserve a particular group of insects or something like that, I think the techniques and experiences that I've had, I hope will kind of help guide you in the future. So it might come as no surprise to you that the answer to that question I'm posing in my title is yes. I think that social media is incredibly valuable in extending the message, the public health messages we're trying to promote. But I guess what I really want to talk about today, I guess, is highlighting why social media is really important for that. And I think for me, in my experience, what I found is that you can't look at social media as some kind of parallel universe that you'll jump over into and you can do all your work in that sphere, because I don't think it works like that. I think I thought that when I first started using social media for this reason, but I think what I've learnt over time is that it's really a way, social media is a way that you can kind of build networks, not just between the community, but also with the traditional media, but also local authorities that you're engaging with as well, whether in my case it might be the health department, or in yours it might be sort of national parks or conservation agencies. So let me tell you a little bit about what I do and how social media might fit into that and my objectives. I kind of do two things in my job. First of all, I try to stop Australians getting sick after they've been bitten by mosquitoes. And a little bit of a side thing to that is that I'm trying to protect the environment. So I work a lot in relation to constructed and rehabilitated wetlands, trying to reduce the productivity of mosquitoes from those habitats and increasing the risk of mosquito-borne disease. Because I believe that mosquitoes, as much as they're a natural part of the Australian wetland ecosystem, they can kind of erode the goodwill of the community for wetland conservation. And I'm trying to break down some of those barriers. Trying to explain to people that, sure, we have a few mosquitoes that pose a health risk, but there's a whole lot of others that don't pose any health risks to humans. And perhaps, hey, they might even form a very important ecological role as well. But I'm also trying to manage mosquitoes and mosquito-borne disease risk. And even though we have very limited broad-scale mosquito control in Australia, the big emphasis for our health authorities is the promotion of personal protection measures, and a big component of that is promoting the use of mosquito repellents. And if any of you saw my presentation on Sunday morning, one of the things I highlighted is that we're really missing some national guidelines for mosquito repellent use. And I don't think that we're really giving good enough information to the local community on how to choose and use mosquito repellents better. And that's kind of one of the things I'm trying to do through my use of social media. As part of those measures trying to promote mosquito repellent use and awareness of mosquito-borne disease, in a lot of my work with other local authorities, we've tried a lot of different things, trying to listen to the community. What do they want to know about repellents? Which areas are at risk of mosquito-borne disease? So things like putting mosquito-borne disease risk awareness information in with tide charts for people who are going fishing, or golf score sheets if they're in an area where they're playing golf where they might be at risk of mosquito-borne disease. So we're all looking at new ways. We even tried having a MySpace page once, but that was a bit of a disaster. So I guess I wanted to embrace social media, and one of the triggers for that was that I do a lot of work for the Sydney Olympic Park Authority. That's here in Sydney. They rehabilitated a lot of wetlands around where the 2000 Olympics were. And they had a really strong and engaging online presence, not just about the wetlands, but also other things that were happening on the site. So whether it be how bad the parking was going to be at the coming up Miley Cyrus concert, or that a rare bird had been spotted in the wetlands. They covered a whole range of things. And I started to get involved in that in terms of promoting wetland education, because I do a lot of teaching for their workshops, professional development, and just trying to get the word out about the wetlands. They're not all bad. They're not all mosquito havens. We're trying to make them better, and we are. And the great thing that I experienced is that you get this fantastic engagement with the other people that are working on site. So I might not be necessarily directly engaging with other contractors or companies or organisations, but they're dealing with the Sydney Olympic Park Authority, I'm dealing with them, and you start to create this network of communications. So I thought, how about we try using that for health? So I started the Twitter account Mozzie Bites, and I guess my main emphasis was to promote public health messages. And so I tweet out everything about my own mosquito research, news about mosquitoes and mosquito-borne disease that's in the news, but I'm also trying to emphasise some of these public health messages. And again, it's about raising awareness of public health risks, but also some of these issues about repellent use and things like that. I've also produced sort of some guidelines that are available online, so it's a great avenue to kind of promote people's access to some of that information. But you know what? I sometimes wondered whether I was just bashing away, sending out tweets, and whether anybody was really looking at that. And I guess that's for all of us in our work. We want to know that it's recognised, we want to know that it's getting out. So how do we measure that? I was really interested in how I could measure that, and particularly at the time when I didn't really have very many people following me on Twitter. So between November 2012 and May 2013, I used a program called TweetReach to measure how many unique accounts my messages were being delivered to every week. And some really interesting stuff turned out of it. And again, keeping in mind that I had a pretty modest following at the time, maybe less than 800 people, you get this amplifying effect because you've got good networks and good connections with other people. You might see that big peak there, almost 100,000 people. And that was because I appeared on one of the morning TV shows, national TV shows in Australia, and was tweeted out by their Twitter account, which then retweeted tweets about links to my mosquito repellent guidelines. So I got to reach a lot of people. But then you've also got these smaller peaks, and they're not because one of the big guys has retweeted you, but lots of little people in your network have retweeted you to their networks. And so again, you get this amplifying effect that the message is getting out. So, you know, even though I had less than 800 people at the time, the messages are getting out to many more people than that. And so I think this alone is highlighting how great and how beneficial social media can be in sort of amplifying your messages. And I guess the take-home message from that is that you don't need to have 1 million followers. If you started using Twitter and you're worried that you're not attracting enough followers, don't worry about it. Build the relationships with the followers you do have, and they'll be able to amplify your messages, and your followers will flow on from that. So I really believe that it's the quality of the connections, not the quantity, that's really important in extending that message and that idea that you're trying to share through Twitter. And so this is the other big issue that I kind of have been thinking about, is that you've got to build these social and what I call unsocial networks in terms of the traditional media or these other organisations that you might not ordinarily be associated with. And I guess when I started out, I thought that I would attract a lot of people to follow me because they loved mosquitoes. Everybody loves mosquitoes as much as me, don't they? Why wouldn't I get a lot of followers and people would be interested in that? But you might be surprised that didn't quite work out. However, what has worked out is that other people in organisations and the media have followed me, and this is really great. So even though you might not recognise some of these names on the screen, you've got organisations like my institution, the University of Sydney, as well as New South Wales Health, and then our local media. And then even though I've highlighted our local ABC station here in Sydney, all the media in Australia will have Twitter accounts and social media presence. And what I could do is sort of interact with these organisations, and so essentially I've got access to their followers. So everybody's not following me because I want to know about every mosquito-borne disease outbreak, but they're following these other organisations. And by building a relationship with them, they can filter my messages through to their followers. And I think this is where it's really critical. Journalists, broadcasters, media, they all have a social media presence. And Twitter is fast becoming the time in which I get the first contact with journalists. They enhance interviews, they let me retweet content, and really engage audiences beyond what I would normally do in those few minutes on the radio. And it establishes a voice of authority for me. And I guess extending to that, I get opportunities to write for websites like The Conversation that Derek talked about. And these articles here have had about 15,000 views of them, much more than I would get from any of my other academic writing. It provides an opportunity, something freely available that people can access. And even getting some data from New South Wales Health, we see these articles can actually drive activity to the local authorities as well. This is some data on the daily access to the one of the mosquito-borne disease fact sheets at New South Wales Health, and you can see this big peak here. Now, I guess we can't be 100% sure, but one of the biggest things that happened then to drive that peak was me publishing an article on Ross River virus in The Conversation. And a lot of the traffic to the New South Wales Health website came through that article. So I think that our use of social media and open access articles can really drive activity to these voices of authority in these main organisations. I do a lot of blogging, like many of us here, and I just want to give you one really quick example of one of my blogs and how that can extend public health messages. I do a lot of work with repellents, as I might have mentioned before. One of the most common search terms to reach my blog is people wanting information about mosquito repellent wristbands and patches and things like that. I've done some work to show that they do actually work for about 1 centimetre either side of the band. I published that work in a scientific paper, local journal. It's probably had a few hundred people look at it. But I wrote a blog post about it that's been incredibly popular. Some of the cool people in the room have retweeted about it. And now I've had about 27,000 people read that blog post. Far outreaches anything that I would normally have for a normal article. And you can see some of the readerships of some of my more popular pieces, particularly about repellents, are really high. I'm really happy and satisfied with that. I think I'm really getting the message out, and more people are accessing that than the scientific literature. So I guess in summary and to close, I really feel strongly that social media can increase the reach of public messages, but also your messages about entomology as well. But you have to use it to enhance those traditional communication mechanisms. It's not going to replace them. And so thanks for your time, and I'm more than happy to have a chat to you after the session about my use down here in Australia with social media. So thanks very much.